My next guest has been criticized, even taken to court for what he has written and said about radical Islam. Mark Steyn is a writer, an activist, and author of the undocumented Mark Steyn. Don't say you weren't warned. Mark, thank you for being here tonight, and I know you knew some of the men who worked at this publication. Your thoughts on what we have seen in Paris today? Yes,
they were very brave. This was the only publication that was willing to publish the Danish Mohammed cartoons in 2006 because they decided to stand by those Danish cartoonists. I'm proud to have written for the only Canadian magazine to publish those Mohammed cartoons, and it's because the New York Times didn't, and Le Monde in Paris didn't, and the London Times didn't, and all the other great newspapers of the world didn't. Only Charlie Hebdo and my magazine in Canada and a few others did. That they were forced to bear a burden that should have been more widely dispersed. I mean, I see all these teary candle-lit vigils and everyone claiming suddenly to be for freedom of speech. I think one consequence of this is that a lot of people will retreat even further into self-censorship. The New York Daily News won't even show dishonors the dead in Paris by not even showing properly the cartoons. They pixelated Mohammed out of it, so it looks like Mohammed has entered the witness protection program, but they left the hook-nosed Jew in, and that exactly gets to the double standard here. You can say anything you like about Christianity, you can say anything you like about Judaism, but these guys, everyone understands the message, that if you say something about Islam, these guys will kill you, and we will be retreating into a lot more self-censorship if the pansified Western media doesn't man up and decide to disperse the risk. So they can't just kill one little small French satirical magazine, they got to kill all of us. The decision not to republish these images that mock the Prophet Muhammad initially may have been done because they found those offensive. Many in the Muslim community find them very offensive, same as they wouldn't republish images, some publications, mocking Jesus Christ, mocking other religious figures. Has it morphed now to a place where it's not just about respect for religion, it's about fear? I mean, that newspapers, news organizations have fear. I think your point of view is valid, Megan, if you're the cartoon editor of the New Yorker and those fellas in Denmark send you the cartoons and you think, well, these are in poor taste, not particularly funny, not particularly well drawn. But the fact that the New York Times and the LA Times and the Boston Globe and the Chicago Tribune and the Toronto Globe and Mail and the Irish Times and the Sunday Star Times in New Zealand didn't publish them after people have been killed for them, and they're actually a news story now. They're not a cartoon. It's not an artistic judgment. It's not an aesthetic judgment. But the fact they won't even show you them after people have been killed for them shows that we're actually retreating. The media, which congratulates itself on its bravery, is one of the most tedious institutions for handing out awards for its bravery, far more than firemen or soldiers do. The fact that they didn't even have the courage to show these cartoons after they became a news story is why these brave men at Charlie Hebdo had to bear the burden almost single-handed. And see what the New York Daily News did is absolutely disgraceful, I think, and dishonors the dead.
You've studied a lot about radical Islam. We get a report every week of another lone wolf terrorist attack. These guys reportedly trained in Syria. One of them already had a terror conviction under his belt. I mean, what should the West be doing? What are we doing or not doing that we need to stop this?
Well, we need to be honest. John Kerry today said that this was a battle between civilization and, pregnant pause, the forces that are opposed to civilization. Well, perhaps he'd like to be a bit more specific, because these men all have something in common, and John Kerry isn't prepared to address it. And President Obama, the leader of the so-called free world, quite disgracefully stood up before the world at the United Nations and said the future shall not belong to those who slander the Prophet of Islam. For a start, under American law and the laws of all civilized societies, you can't slander a bloke who died in the 7th century. But secondly, the head of the country with the First Amendment shouldn't be standing up at the United Nations and indicating that he's willing to trade off freedom of speech. That was a disgraceful performance. You know, he said the future shall not belong to those who slander the Prophet of Islam. He talked the talk. These savage, murdering fanatics in Paris today walk the walk. So words matter, and as long as the President and John Kerry and David Cameron and all these other people are dishonest and evasive about the source of the threat, we will continue to lose brave men like we did in Paris today.
Mark Steyn, thank you for being here.